Great pass from Diamantidis.
The lob is done!
Here we go, 40 minutes to a title.
David Blue for three. On the mark, David Blue.
Now Spinellis drives inside, looks for the alley-oop! Corey Higgins just exploding.
EuroLeague Sweet 16. It's the roster rundown.
Hello and welcome to our final preseason special episode of EuroLeague Sweet 16 with me, Moshe from Team Scout, and as always, my great friend and co-host, Aris Barkas from Eurohoops.net. Now, guys, we can unveil, we have closed in on Emmet's whereabouts. He's supposed to be taking a crash course of cow milking in Slovenia, so we can only hope that he will be back in time for our season opener. Yep, that's our next episode, so make sure you tune in as well. But in the meantime, let's say hi to everyone. We have Aris Barkas from Eurohoops.net, and we have a great friend, a great guy. Yep, I am talking to the great David Hine, and he will be with us. So Aris, Dave, hi guys, how are you doing on this magnificent day?
I'm doing very good. It is exciting to be back on a podcast. Thank you for having me, and looking forward to talking about what I expect to be a very, very fascinating EuroLeague season.
Hello everyone, glad to have you on the show, and especially it was about time to have David on a podcast, not as a host, but as a guest, and I'm pretty sure that this is going to be a very interesting conversation.
David, it is a pleasure having you here on Sweet 16. Let's start with talking about Bayern Munich. They had, I would say, a very interesting season last year. Their project is, it's keeping its progress. How do you see it long-term wise with them winning the Bundesliga championship and simply looking ahead? Putting the money, bringing Daniel Baese, how does it all work for them at the moment?
Well, I think this team, this club is pretty well set up for the future. They have the commitment now from EuroLeague to be there a couple of years. They don't have to worry about winning the league in order to be in the EuroLeague. Like you said, the money is there, and it's ever increasing, and it's almost shying away other teams here in Germany. I know Bamberg is the Bamberg owner. Stoschek kind of just said, we can't compete with them, and so that's one of the reasons why they kind of, let's say, slid down to the Champions League. But the thing is set up, and now what's going to be important for them is to bring in EuroLeague level players. In order to compete at the EuroLeague level. They've shown that in the past that they can compete at least for the BBL title with German level players. But in order to really compete at the EuroLeague level, they're going to need EuroLeague level players. And I think bringing in a guy like Daniel Baese as sort of the sports director is the official title. He's a guy that has so many connections, and that's a really big help for Marko Pezic and the club to bring in the guys needed in order to compete in the EuroLeague.
Speaking of EuroLeague players, to their roster, to Bayern's roster, I got to ask, they kept their core from last year. The question is how good that might be, considering the fact that they haven't won the Euro Cup, but they are entering a competition that's in a very, 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 very high level. So first of all, what do you make of this roster? And realistically speaking, what should their expectations be coming to this season?
First, let's say, they could have arguably won the Euro Cup. They even EuroLeague, Euro Cups reporting, called their semifinal with Dasha Faka, some of the most amazing, exciting games in the history of the competition. So, they were on the brink of winning the Euro Cup, ended up getting beaten by Dasha Faka in the semifinals. Dasha Faka ended up winning it. And obviously then that gets them the spot into the EuroLeague. What do I make of the roster? First of all, they bring almost everybody back. The only really only two guys they lose three guys they lose are Reggie Redding, Mike Sirbis, and then Anton Gavel actually retired, so he won't be around. But so everybody is a year older, a year wiser, has the experience of going to the semifinals, losing to Dashafaka, in I guess if you're a Bayern fan, tragic manner. And so had shown that they can play at the top level, Euro Cup level, top Euro Cup level, win the German championship, and also won the German Cup. So they did win two titles last year, and I think realistically can be disappointed that they didn't win the Euro Cup last year as well. So they bring almost everybody back. Many of those guys are making their EuroLeague debut. But so you look at Booker, making his EuroLeague debut. Bartel is making his EuroLeague debut. Hobbs is making his EuroLeague debut. But everybody's back, and all those leaders are back. The injury to Machvan, who had another long-term injury, is going to miss several months. Is going to hurt the team because of the experience. The guys they brought in are very experienced. All have EuroLeague level, or most of them have EuroLeague level. You look at Petteri Koponen, you look at Leon Radosevic and Mao Delo, both of the latter playing with Bamberg. So these guys bring in some of that EuroLeague experience. Also, Nemanja Dangovic. These guys do bring in the EuroLeague experience, so that will definitely help some of those other guys who might not actually have played in the competition. Regarding expectations, one of the things that you look at, the schedule is very favorable for Bayern. 3 of the first 4 games are at home, and actually 6 of the first 8 are at home. And so if they can figure out where they're at in the EuroLeague, and then say, okay, we'll need to do this or this, as far as tinking the roster here or there, dealing with an injury here or there, that gives them a pretty big help. Having the home court fans there, especially if they get some big wins. That could really give them a push forward, and if they can start well, then you have added confidence, and then you can go from there. Trying to just kind of look at the start of the BBL season. They start in Ulm this week, and then have really a decent scheduled, home games against Vechta and Gießen, at Braunschweig. Then you have a home game against Bonn, at Bremerhaven, at Kreilsheim. So really not until Oldenburg week 7, let's say the second week of November, do they face a tough game with Oldenburg, but that's at home as well. So you look at the schedule, both schedules, and they're very favorable for Bayern at the start of the year. And if they can get some confidence of getting some victories over some big teams, they play Panathinaikos at home, they play Dashafaka at home, they play CSK Moscow at home, they play Olympiacos at home. If they can grab a couple of these victories at home against some of these bigger teams, and then are rolling in the BBL as well, this could really prove a critical help for this team.
David, what it means for German basketball, German fans, and the German national media in general to have a Bayern Munich back in the EuroLeague? What's the impact on the coverage of not only Bayern's games in the EuroLeague, but for basketball in general.
I think that actually depends on how they start in the EuroLeague. If they can, get a couple of victories, and it is, it is the big bad Bayern, and the club that everybody hates in football. They're definitely developing that in basketball as well. So I think as far as national coverage of the team, really it's going to depend on how they do, and maybe a little bit also, if maybe some of the other teams struggle in some of the other competitions, in the Euro Cup competition or Champions League competition, Bayern is beating all these super great teams in Europe, and some of the other clubs, some of the other top clubs in Germany are struggling. There's going to be coverage of Bayern regardless, just because it is Bayern. But I think the the amount of it will kind of depend on maybe a little bit more how they perform in the early going. That's kind of my feeling, from this point in the season.
And with what results the fans and the club will be content? Because frankly, we don't see Bayern as a team which is ready to make the playoffs.
That's kind of tough. I think the BBL in the BBL, the leaders of the team, Pesic and Baeze, they know that this is not going to be an easy season for them, just because of the sheer number of games that goes along with this, with being in the EuroLeague, and I think they're going to add players. Um, and really, I think what they're going to just wait for the first, whatever, I would say 3-4 weeks, whatever, somewhere in that, to see what they still need, and then sort of the caliber of player. Maybe they go by the first 3-4 weeks and say, maybe those, 3 of the first 4 games being at home, Anadolu, Panathinaikos, at Barcelona, Baskonia, those games. They look at those first 4 games and then say, okay, well, we had these 3 teams at home, and whatever, we were 1-3 after 4 games, with 3 of those games being at home. This isn't maybe going to be as good as we hope. I don't know. That's sheer speculation. But I think that the BBL title is definitely what they want, and I'm sure they want to repeat the double, get the cup title, which is a note for your listeners. The German Cup is going to be a round by round thing, and over the course of the season. So that's an added interesting part to this whole campaign. Whether or not they can challenge, you had Capone played at Barcelona, so he's going to bring in sort of a winner's mentality. You look at the Serbs, and those guys are, national team had loads of great success. Kind of depends on what Booker can do. Booker was all Euro Cup last year. They have some pretty good point guards, and actually, I kind of looked a little bit deeper at the roster last couple of days, because I didn't know how well they shoot from the outside, and these guys are these guys can really shoot from the outside, and if we've seen it all over at basketball now. If you can hit your outside shots, you can definitely compete. I think they're going to be needing to get more athletic at the big, and Derek Williams obviously helped that. So whether or not they can challenge for the quarterfinal playoffs, yeah, I don't know. how realistic that is. A quick start. Maybe if they're 6-2 after 8 games, I'm sure they would love to have that. And those are wins in the bag, come crunch time later on. So, but realistically, their expectations for this season, I would say German title, and German Cup title, and then EuroLeague. If they get a good start and things fall the way they hope, and they can bring in a guy or two, and also they stay healthy, relatively healthy, to go maybe as far as possible.
Adding to that, actually to what you've previously said about their home games, they might be opening with 6 out of 8 at home, and that has, this might have huge impact down the road. But at the same time, this only means that the second round for them would be with a whole lot of away games. So it's like trying to hit the ground running for them, because it can work both ways in a way, isn't it?
Exactly, and that's why I think that if they see the roster that they have can get, let's say, 3 out of 4 in the first 4 games, and then okay, we don't really need to tinker too much, and then they add one part, whatever part that is that they feel they need, and they can grab maybe 2 or 3, maybe they're 5-3, 6-2, 5-3 after 8 games. Say, okay, well, we've done this, but we've done it at home, and so the second half is going to be much more harder. And not only is the EuroLeague second half, but the second, the rest of those Bundesliga games are going to be starting to get more difficult, because you really didn't play anybody until mid-November, and then so all those games are going to be coming up, and so yeah, it's definitely going to be an intriguing season. If looking at the schedule is never sexy, but if you look at the schedule and kind of think about it a little bit, this is going to be a super intriguing season for Bayern, and if they come out of the first 2 months or whatever with a couple of injuries, this team will face some big time turmoil on the court, because then come all the big games, EuroLeague and BBL, and they're just they're not going to have the horses to do it. So yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting one.
So I think this covers everything up for Bayern. David, it was a pleasure to have you, not being the guest, being the host. Your podcast will be missed, and we hope for a return. And we also hope that having Bayern in the top European competition will even help the growth even more for German basketball, because the bar was set too high by the German league. The previous executives wanted the league to be among the top 3 in Europe by the end of this decade, but I think that despite a stable financial environment, there are still huge steps that must be taken in order for Germany to get to the level to compete with Spain, with the VTB League and Turkey.
Yeah, I agree. It would be very, very important for Bayern to have a strong season. Just also with those league aspirations, they actually to be the number 1 domestic league by 2020 is actually what their long-term goal was. And so it's important with Bayern for sure to make it there. Let's say the quarterfinal playoffs soon. I think this year, might be very difficult, but if they can, push forward now, knowing that they're going to be in the EuroLeague, that's one of the things that you also have to consider, is that they didn't know they would be in the EuroLeague, or they would know when they're going to be in the EuroLeague, because, only the German champion was going in, and you had to win the title. Now they can have some planning certainty that they can plan, that they can say, okay, this is going to be, we're going to be in the EuroLeague, and we need to bring in this level of players, and we need to, get up to this budget. But it's not going to be only on Bayern. It's also going to be on the other teams, playing in other competitions. Ludwigsburg did reach Bayern reached the semifinals of the Euro Cup. Ludwigsburg went to the Final Four of the Champions League. So it's not only going to be on Bayern, but obviously having an important presence late in the season in EuroLeague is really important for the German league. Regarding coming on the show, yeah, thanks. It's kind of missed, the weekly run and to do the podcast. But at the same time, it's also kind of nice to, taking a break and gotten out of it and not, have to worry about having an interview every week. But it was definitely a cool ride, and I'm really thankful to everybody who supported the show for all those years, and it was great having you guys on the shows as well. But good things can come to an end as well. Opens the door for different horizons, whatnot. However, whatever cheesy thing you want to say to that. But pass the gauntlet to other emerging podcasts and let the other guys have a good run for a while too. So, yeah, thank you definitely for bringing me on. And anytime you want to talk, feel free. You guys know definitely obviously how to find me. Yeah, this was really fun. Thanks.
Dave, thank you so much. It was an honor and a pleasure having you here. Hearing these kind of words from you, it means a lot, and we appreciate it. And just so you know, we have every intention to take you on this offer of yours. So you just be ready, and we'll text you. We'll text you. It's a guarantee. And well, since Byron's now done, in a way, they're not done, but we're done talking about Byron. It's time to move on to our final four frequent flyers. Yep, we're talking CSKA Moscow now. Aris, some players have left, some came. We know that they're probably going to have another interesting season. Expectations are high, but regarding all those changes they've made and their additions, of course, what do you think of it?
On the topic of CSKA Moscow, we have to admit that this is once more a season in which CSKA can go all the way, but this is not news. What's really interesting, I think, for CSKA Moscow is that they didn't go in the market and didn't try to get big names, but they really tried to get players that fit. They got Peters, they got Bolomboy, who is a very interesting case because he will also get a Russian passport if he has not got it already. And they also have Daniel Hackett in the roster. And I think that a guy who could do all the little things that sometimes does not translate even into the stats, then the situation changes. And of course, CSKA still has star power with Sergio Rodriguez, with Nando De Colo, with Will Clyburn, even with Kyle Hines, even if he doesn't fit the traditional mold of a star player. But I think that the roster of CSKA Moscow this year around is much more balanced, and they have all the tools they need in order to get back into the top. It will be a very interesting season to see, and it will be a very interesting team if they develop the right chemistry and everyone accepts their own roles. It will be very interesting also to see what will happen with Corey Higgins, because when Nando De Colo was missing, he was amazing last season, and now he will have to change a bit his role in the backcourt. So I think that there are some question marks about CSKA Moscow, but they are all good questions because it seems that what was already very, very good can really get even more better.
Aris, that was spot on. You just hit the nail on the head with Corey. First of all, last year's Final Four in Belgrade, I remember talking to Emmet saying, he should have definitely gotten more minutes in the semifinals, but it's ancient history by now. So I would say, I agree with you on pretty much everything. I would say that without a doubt, They brought guys that can balance the team. I would say that they are even better than last year. Not that last year they weren't good, but I'm saying that it looks like, you know what, if there was a need in a change, they did exactly what they needed to do. And now, with all the great question marks, there is one that is true to pretty much a whole lot of teams that made changes around this offseason, and that would be the chemistry issue. We'll have to see how fast Bolombo and Peters and obviously Daniel Hackett. Now, that in my books was a steal. I think it should be a perfect fit for them. But again, everything will come down, bottom line, to how good all of these new pieces would come into place. And talking about Cheska, we cannot leave Khimki aside. Obviously, another great team from Moscow, but not just. I mean, some interesting changes, like for example, Robinson out, Jordan in, Anderson out. Aris, with all these changes, and there were quite a few, a team that made it, just in the last, in a way, it was in the last moment to the EuroLeague playoffs. How do we see these changes made by Khimki? And well, what do you make of them?
Kimki can be a team that will surprise anyone. They are the main rivals of CSKA. They have a great roster and they have the best offensive player in Europe in Alexei Zvet. So I think that it's just a matter of finding the right chemistry and finding the right support around Zvet in order to give him the chance to make his own thing without his game hurting the rest of the team function. I think that after 1 year with Coach Bartzokas, this will be easy to become a reality. And also, they added one of the most interesting cases in the upcoming EuroLeague. Jordan Mikey has all the tools to be a great EuroLeague player, and he has shown in the NBA that he can do a lot of things like center. So here he will be the guy in the middle, and I think very few teams have a player to match him. If I wanted to place a bet on a dark horse to make it to the Final Four, then probably Himki will get my money.
Aris, I agree on some of the things. I don't know if I would put my money on them at the moment as a dark horse because I do see a whole lot of teams that can portray that specific part in the 2018 2019 EuroLeague season. So that's that. They are solid. They should be good, but I don't know if they are, if they are at the moment. I mean, they could, but will they be good enough to go even one step further? Only time will tell. That's why I'm not, that eager to put my money on them. Like I said, there are a few other teams that I would do before. Now, moving on to our last team to discuss. Yes, I am referring to Budućnost Voli Podgorica. Now, I do hope I said it right. Aris, I would say that very little is known on this team, perhaps, but indeed some interesting movements. Getting Clark, getting Edwin Jackson. Now, let's be honest, I'm not expecting them to be playoff contenders. I'll say it right here, right now. I do expect them to, go out swinging in a way, trying to create as much of damage as they can to all the other contenders. They're going to be one of these teams that perhaps would be fun to watch, but not necessarily make it at the end. I think they're going to have a very fun run.
Budućnost, let me pronounce it right, is a very interesting case because they surprised everyone last season by beating Zvezda and leaving the Serbs outside the EuroLeague. They made some interesting additions with Clark and Edwin Jackson, and I think that very few teams will have an easy time at Hala Moraca in Podgorica. They have a tradition of being a team of fighters, and this is the mentality that at least the local players will have. I want to see them on the road because this will really prove if they can do something more than damage to teams that will not have the chance to win at Moracha. But I don't expect them to be a punching bag. On the contrary, I think that they have all the tools to make things interesting, and it will be a joy to watch them, especially at their home games. And that's all. We finally found Emmet, and I think that we cover in our previews every EuroLeague team in what's expected to be a pretty interesting EuroLeague season, and a historical one because it will be the last in the 16 teams format before the expansion to 18 teams. So one way or another, this is gonna be a season that will have a special place in the record books. So that's all. For me, Aret Bakas from Eurohoops.net. Have a great season and follow us at Sweet 16. And you can also find me on the Eurohoops.net social media and also my personal social media on Twitter and Facebook.
Yes, Aris, you are spot on. We have managed to find Emmet. So, guys, from the gator swimming in the Serengeti through base jumping in Frisco, and we can definitely not forget there was that one where he did some bungee jumping in Tijuana. We have learned that recently he took a crash course in cow milking in Slovenia, believe it or not. Yeah, and that intel actually came from Kaunas. So we can say for a fact that Emmet will be back in 4 minutes or more. We also have to say that having David Hine on our preseason special edition of EuroLeague Sweet 16 was a blast. So, Dave, thank you so much for being with us. And please tell everyone where can they find you.
The website's highnews.com, and there you can find all 300 episodes of Taking the Charge to go back and listen. 300 episodes is a long time. Highnews.com, at Highnews, HEINNEWS on Twitter. Those are the main places where you can find me. And I also have a column for FIBA focusing on youth basketball. Just go to FIBA.basketball, and then you can look under the columnists, and I'm there. Eye on the future. And so that's where people can find me. And thanks.
And as always, you can find me at MosesB1 and at I am Team Scout on Twitter, MosesB1 on Instagram, and of course, Team Scout, the Facebook page, and teamscout.net. Now, make sure you follow our SoundCloud channel and Eurohoops' YouTube channel, because this episode, and every other one will be uploaded there as well. So make sure you spread the love and do your thing as ever. Now, only one thing left to say, and that's till next time, our season opener of EuroLeague Sweet 16. So stay tuned.
That's 4 days, Aris and Moshe. That's 4 days. And I'm back.